Last week we looked at how bones respond to mechanical loading, and I want to do the same thing for tendons. So you might remember with bones, we would expose a bone to some load. Maybe you start a new plyometrics program, you do some damage, and then you activate osteoclasts, osteoblasts. The osteoblasts become osteocytes. We went over all this last week. There are some important implications about what that process looks like for programming exercise for preventing bone loss or for leading to bone mass gain. And there are analogous properties for tendons, although they're a little different. So in this video, I want to go over some of the science of how tendons respond to the kind of loading you experience during exercise. So as a reminder, tendons are comprised on the microscopic level of these wavy collagen fibers like this. It's a type of protein. And just like anything, if you start doing some new exercises, you might maybe break one of those fibers, you might damage it, you might get a little inflammation, and your body, which, tendons being a living structure, is going to repair that. As you might imagine, that repair happens through something called collagen synthesis. So your body makes more collagen, gradually deposits it in this area, and fixes whatever break happened, and can even over time you can even get increases in the size of the tendon. I'm actually not 100% sure whether that's brand new collagen being laid down, or if that like additional fibers, or if the individual fibrils just get thicker, like we saw with bones. On the left here, I have a really nice figure that shows what the response, the collagen synthesis response, is as a function of the number of loading repetitions. So this might be number of plyometric jumps, number of steps you take on a run, number of weightlifting reps. So you'll notice, by the way, at rest, meaning when you do nothing, you still have about a 5, whatever their units are here, 5% collagen turnover. So this is like baseline. Even when you're just sitting in a chair, there's some level of collagen being synthesized just to keep your tendons in working order. So notice on the x-axis here, we have loading repetitions, and it's a logarithmic scale. So we're increasing by a factor of 10 every time we jump to here, to here, to here. So the different types of exercise here we have, and I don't know why they labeled it right to left, but C is 10 sets of 10 knee extensions at 70% of 1 rep max. So that's 10 by 10, that's in 100-ish. I don't know why it's labeled up here, but close to 100-ish. B is 1 hour of maximal knee kicking. So maybe that's like some kind of swimming type thing, soccer practice. And then A up here, many tens of thousands of loading repetitions. It's 36 kilometers of running. So that's 20-ish, 22 miles. So most of a marathon. It's maybe about as much running as a recreational runner might do in an entire week. So you can see that just like with bone, maybe you remember this from, hopefully you remember this from last week. With bone, we got almost maximal bone synthesis after just 60 to 100 reps of, or 60 to 100 loading cycles. With tendon, based on this study here at least, it seems like about the same thing is true, maybe 100 to 1,000 loading cycles. It gives you maybe more or less the maximum collagen synthesis. But from a health and injury perspective, this is only half the story, because it's also important to remember that more loading cycles are going to induce more damage. So if you do, say, 100,000 loading cycles up here from running 30 miles a week or 40 miles a week or however much that would be, you're going to get about the same tendon collagen synthesis as running 100 times less, but the damage is going to still be going up. In terms of damage versus synthesis, just like with bone, with tendon, there's this interesting dynamic between this is collagen protein synthesis following exercise and degradation following exercise. So there's this really interesting phenomena where after you exercise, you of course, some old damaged collagen is taken away, and so that protein is degraded. And at the same time, you are synthesizing new collagen. So I think unlike bone, it seems like there's collagen being synthesized at the same time as the old stuff is being resorbed. You remember with bone, first we had several weeks of old bone tissue being eaten away by osteoclasts. Then osteoblasts came in a few weeks later. But for tendon, this seems to happen over a shorter period of time, a few days. This is after one bout of exercise. And the thing to notice here, or the thing to look at, is the net effect, which is here in purple. So the net effect after, say, 24 hours of exercise is your tendon is a little bit weaker because there's been more degradation of the collagen than synthesis. And then after maybe a day or two, you get a little bit stronger. And then as all this stuff kind of evens out, you approach but don't get all the way back down to baseline. This is after just one exercise session, though. So the implication for exercise programming is, suppose you exercised your tendons really hard every day. What would happen? Well, you'd get like this, and then you'd do another loading cycle and synthesis and degradation. And so you'd go like this, and then like this, and then like this. And if you stacked up enough of these days of very intensive tendon loading without any recovery, the quality of your tendon would go way down over time, right? But with appropriate programming, with the right amount of stress and the right amount of recovery, right? Imagine you stack one 48-hour loading cycle like this, then you stack another one, and then another one, and then another one, and you could see how that would lead to an upward trajectory in overall net collagen synthesis. And this is why I think, by the way, people don't recommend doing lifting of the same body part every single day of the week, because you'd be on that downward trajectory. Whereas if you say do upper body lifts only 3 times a week, you might be able to stick on this upward trajectory. So this is another example of how understanding the cellular dynamics of tendon and understanding its mechanical properties can give some really useful insights into how you should plan training programming, both like day to day, and then also how you might want to think about the different types of exercises that may induce tendon synthesis. Now, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we haven't only talked about what really induces tendon synthesis, and there's a lot more to say about how different numbers of loading cycles affect the damage that you incur to biological tissues, but that's something that we'll talk about next week.